Welcome back to Hardware Unboxed. Today we have a hybrid benchmark / build video. So hopefully that turns out to be a lot of fun. This idea came about when Cooler Master sent over their latest line of Tough Edition hardware. As you've probably guessed, they have partnered with ASUS and they've jumped on the Tough branding to create the MB500 Tough Edition. We have the Masterwatt 750 Tough Edition. Then we have the Master Air coolers, and that includes the Master Air MA620P Tough Edition and the Master Air MA410M Tough Edition. Basically what this means is we now have a Tough themed PC case. We have a power supply. There's actually two, but we have one of them here. And then there are only two coolers and we do have both of them here. So they will all go nicely with the ASUS Tough themed motherboards. And it's not just Cooler Master who's been hitting the gym. Team Group's also been working hard to try and get buff with the new T-Force Vulcan Tough Gaming Alliance DDR4 memory. Damn it, guys, enough with the ridiculously long product names. You get 2 words. 2 words, that's it. That's the new rule. Apologies for that outburst. I have taken a moment to calm myself down, so let's get back to it. The final piece of the Tough puzzle is the ASUS Tough H370 Pro Gaming, and I have to say this is a component that I am least confident in. That's largely due to the fact that the motherboard sells for $135 US, and that means there's roughly half a dozen Z370 boards on the market that actually cost less. Not only that, but ASUS's own Tough Z370 board comes in at a mere $15 price premium. This is a problem because while the Z370 board allows for overclocking of the unlocked K model CPUs, as well as DDR4 memory, the H370 boards support neither of these features. If you're going with a Core i5-8400 processor like we are, CPU overclocking really isn't a big deal, as this is a locked CPU and therefore can't be overclocked on any board. But we are limited to DDR4 2666 memory, and on a Z370 board, you could take advantage of much faster memory. But how much of an advantage is the faster memory under typical gaming conditions? We know from previous benchmarks using the GTX 1080 Ti that you stand to gain about 10% more performance at best. But is this still the case for lower end graphics cards? Depending on the quality settings, it might be. So in an effort to determine just how much difference memory frequency makes, we're going to test 3 graphics cards, the GTX 1063GB, GTX 1070 Ti, and GTX 1080, using medium, high, and ultra quality settings. For the H370 board, we're using G-Skill's SniperX 2666 CL19 16GB memory, and we'll be comparing that to a kit of the SniperX 3600 CL19 16GB memory. So this isn't low latency memory, but the latency is the same at both tested frequencies. This means we will be installing both the ASUS Tough H370 Pro Gaming and Tough Z370 Plus Gaming inside the Cooler Master Masterbox MB500 Tough Edition. I'll also be testing out both of the AirMaster Tough Edition CPU coolers, and I'll compare them to Intel's Epic Box Cooler. Okay, so here we see when testing with Battlefield 1 at 1080p with the ultra quality preset, the GTX 1060 delivers the same performance on the H370 board using DDR4 2666 as it does on the Z370 board with much faster DDR4 3200 memory. Upping the GPU firepower with the GTX 1070 Ti sees the faster memory improve the frame time performance by 8%, though the average frame rate is increased by just a few percent. Then with the GTX 1080, we see the frame time performance improved by a 9% margin, while the average goes almost unchanged. Reducing the quality preset to high doesn't change much, as we see very similar performance trends to that of the ultra quality preset. So let's see how things look using the medium quality settings. Interestingly here, the frame time margins close up, as we are likely seeing less load on the CPU using these lower quality settings. Instead, now we're seeing the average frame rate start to increase for the GTX 1070 Ti and 1080 when using the faster memory. Meanwhile, the GTX 1060 is still the primary bottleneck. As you probably expect when jumping up to 1440p, this does see the results become much more GPU bound, and although the GTX 1070 Ti and 1080 are pushing over 60 FPS at all times, the faster memory doesn't really help eke out any extra performance. Reducing the GPU load with the higher quality settings doesn't change much, and again, the faster DDR4 memory is of no real benefit here. Then with the medium quality settings, we again see no performance gains with the faster DDR4 memory. We need to increase the GPU horsepower to see any real benefit here. Next up, we have Fortnite, and at 1080p using the Epic quality preset, the GTX 1060 delivered the same performance on both motherboards using DDR4 2666 and 3200 memory. We see a very small 2% increase in performance for the GTX 1070 Ti and a 4% increase for the GTX 1080, so nothing to write home about. Now with the high quality preset, we see a small benefit to using the higher clocked memory with the GTX 1060 as the average frame rate is improved by a 3% margin. We do though see a much more impressive 11% improvement for the GTX 1070 Ti and much the same for the GTX 1080, though we do appear to have reached the limits of the Core i5-8400 in this test, suggesting that at most the Z370 chipset and the faster DDR4 memory will only boost performance by a little over 10%. But let's move on to see what the medium quality results have for us. Again, small gains can be seen when testing with the GTX 1060, while the 1070 was 9% faster and the 1080 11% faster. So reasonable performance gains, though we do only see a 4% increase for the frame time performance. Once again, increasing the resolution to 1440p basically eliminates any advantage of using the higher frequency memory, at least with the ultra quality settings. We see some improvement at 1440p with the high quality preset, but for the most part the gains are very small. Then finally the medium quality settings, and we see up to an 8% improvement for the higher end GPUs, but again the frame time results are much the same. The last game I tested is Far Cry 5, and again we'll start with the ultra quality settings at 1080p, and here we see a 7% improvement for the 1080, 4% for the 1070 Ti, and just a single percent for the GTX 1060. The margins are much the same using the high quality preset, so again the faster memory offers very little in the way of added performance with these GPUs. Even with the medium quality settings, the margins remain much the same, and this really was our best chance to see any kind of noteworthy gains in Far Cry 5. Of course, as we've already seen twice now, increasing the resolution results in a heavily GPU-bound scenario, and now the improved memory speeds offer nothing in the way of extra performance. This is also true when using the higher quality preset. Even the GTX 1080 delivers the same performance. Then finally, with the medium quality settings, we see once again the exact same performance using either the H370 or Z370 motherboards. Just quickly before moving on from the benchmarks, I tried out the Cooler Master Master Air MA620p and MA410M Tough Edition coolers, but I only had time to compare them with the Intel box cooler on the Core i5-8400. Although you can't overclock the 8400, the advantage of these big aftermarket coolers is that they reduce load temperatures as well as operating noise. Under 100% load in our blender stress test, the temperature dropped from 77 degrees to just 49 degrees with the MA410M, and then a further 3 degrees with the MA620p. Impressive stuff, and if you care at all about temperatures and operating volume, these coolers are worth the upgrade even for a locked Core i5 or i7 processor. Although we saw little to no performance gain when using the Z370 board along with the faster DDR4 memory, I still find H370 boards a bit of a tough sell. Pointless even. H370 boards do start at $90 US, while the Z370 models start at $100. So for just $10 more, you can have a Z370 board. And in this case, the tough model, as I mentioned earlier, is just $15 more. So I feel like for that small investment, you are better off with this board opposed to the tough H370 board. And yeah, $15 really isn't much to pay for the fully fledged model. The biggest cost difference can be seen when looking at the memory. 16GB of DDR4 2666 starts at $160 US, while the 3600 kits start at $190 US. If you combine the motherboard and memory prices, you stand to save at least $40 US, and that's starting to get up there. However, with the memory being by far the biggest expense, I'd still opt for a Z370 board and pair that with the more affordable memory. Thankfully though, ASUS does offer an extensive range of tough motherboards, so those wanting to buy Cooler Master's Masterbox MB500 Tough Edition have a number of options. For an AMD themed build, there is also the new Tough X470 Plus Gaming, and with a Ryzen processor you really could take full advantage of those Air Master Tough Edition CPU coolers. Unfortunately right now, I only have local pricing information for the new Cooler Master Tough Edition products. Over at PC Case Gear, the Masterbox is selling for $125 Australian, which is $20 more than the standard model. The Master Watt 750 also comes in at $125, while the coolers cost $80 each. As expected, you are paying a premium for the Tough Edition gear, but if you want that unique, almost custom modded look, then this new lineup will appeal. And that is going to do it for this one. If you did enjoy the video, be sure to hit the like button, subscribe for more content. If you appreciate the work we do here at Unboxed, then consider supporting us on Patreon. Thanks for watching. I'm your host, Steve, and I'll see you again next time.